In 1959, 9 experienced hikers pitched a tent on a mountain in Russia. That same night, someone cut the tent open from the inside. They ran out into minus 30-degree cold, most of them in their underwear, some without shoes at all. Every one of them died. And 60 years later, scientists are still arguing about why. Let's start with who they actually were. 9 university students and graduates, most in their early 20s, led by a 23-year-old engineering student named Igor Dyatlov. All of them were experienced. This was not their first serious trek. Their goal was a mountain called Gora Otorten, deep in the Ural range, a journey of well over 100 miles through some of the harshest terrain in the country. One member, Yuri Yudin, turned back early due to illness, a decision that, without anyone knowing it yet, saved his life. The remaining 9 continued on, following the valley deeper into the mountains. Before any of this, the trip actually started quite normally. It took several days of trains, trucks, and sleds just to reach the starting point. On one of those trains, a drunk passenger accused them of stealing his vodka. They simply ignored him and let the train conductor handle it instead. It was a small moment, but it says something. This was a calm, level-headed group. Their photographs from the trip show a genuinely happy group, singing, playing a mandolin one of them had brought along, skiing, joking, and clearly enjoying each other's company. On one of their final nights, they even wrote a short satirical newsletter for fun. One joking line in it mentioned a yeti supposedly living near the mountain, a throwaway joke written by people who had no idea what was coming. That joke would later be dug up by people looking for something sinister in it. It was never anything more than a joke. They planned to send word back once the trip was over. That message never came. On the 1st of February, the group made a small mistake. They drifted slightly off course and ended up on the slope of a mountain the local Mansi people called Kholat Syakhl. In the local language, that name means dead mountain. Rather than descend to the shelter of the trees below, they decided to camp right there, on the open slope. To shelter from the wind, they dug down into the snow and pitched their tent inside the hollow. They ate, they wrote in their journals, and they settled in for the night. Nothing in their journals suggested anything was wrong. Sometime during the night, something happened that made them cut their way out of the tent. Not through the entrance, through the fabric itself, from the inside. Investigators later confirmed this. The cuts were made from within. Whatever was happening, it was urgent enough that nobody stopped to find the entrance. Inside the tent, their boots, coats, and supplies were left behind, untouched. Food had even been sliced and set out, as if a meal was about to be eaten. They ran out into a night that was at least minus 25 degrees, some without their coats, some without their shoes. In conditions where exposed skin can suffer real damage within minutes, the group was expected back by February 12th. When that date passed with no word, nobody panicked right away. Delays like this were common on long treks, but as more days passed with total silence, that calm began to fade. By February 20th, a search party was finally sent out. 6 days later, they found the tent, collapsed, half buried, the slashed side facing down the slope. Footprints led away from it, down toward a distant tree line. There is a detail in the footprints worth slowing down on. Most people picture total chaos, 9 people fleeing in every direction, but the footprints tell a different story. They walked in a single file line, descending the slope in a steady, controlled way. One taller member appears to have walked at the back, his prints partly covering the others. A few tracks drifted slightly off course, then rejoined the main line. This is not what pure panic usually looks like. It looks more like frightened people, moving with urgency, but still thinking clearly enough to stay together. That detail actually supports the slab avalanche explanation, a real, immediate danger, but not the kind that erases all judgment. Following those prints, the search team found the first 2 bodies beneath a large cedar tree, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko, found in only their underwear beside a small dead fire. The cedar's lower branches had been broken off, as if someone had tried to climb it, perhaps trying to see something, perhaps trying to escape something on the ground. Not far away, 3 more bodies were found, scattered between the cedar and the tent. Igor Dyatlov himself was among them. Their position suggested they had been trying to climb back to the tent when they died. Quick question before we keep going. What do you think could make 9 experienced people cut their way out of shelter, barefoot, into that cold? Really sit with that. Then let's keep going. For 2 months, the search for the final 4 continued. It was only in May, once the snow began to melt, that they were found. In a small ravine, buried under several meters of snow, Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolovatov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, and Semyon Zolotaryov. Their injuries were far worse than the others. 2 had major chest fractures, the kind normally seen in serious car accidents. 1 had a fractured skull, yet none of them showed any external wounds. No cuts, no bruising on the skin at all. This detail alone has puzzled investigators for decades. What force could cause that kind of internal damage without leaving a mark on the skin? Some clothing recovered from the group also tested positive for radiation. This detail alone fueled decades of speculation about secret weapons testing. But there is a more mundane explanation worth knowing. 2 years earlier, a real nuclear accident had occurred nearby, called the Kishtim disaster. At least one member of the group had lived in or worked near that contaminated area, which may explain the radiation without needing anything more dramatic at all. One more detail deserves honesty, even though it is difficult to hear. One of the 4, Lyudmila Dubinina, was missing her tongue. The most likely explanation is simple, if unpleasant. Decomposition and animal activity after months in the snow. Not everything strange about this case needs a strange explanation. There is one more strange detail worth explaining honestly. Some of the bodies were found wearing clothing that did not belong to them. This fueled theories about a struggle or even foul play between group members. But there is a much simpler explanation. As some group members died first, survivors appear to have taken their clothing, desperately trying to add another layer against the cold. This is actually a well-documented survival instinct, not a sign of any conflict. People sometimes point to a phenomenon called paradoxical undressing. In late-stage hypothermia, some people feel a confusing burst of warmth and remove their clothes. It is a real, documented effect, though it does not explain every single detail here. Between borrowed clothing and this effect, the state of the bodies becomes far less mysterious. The official Soviet investigation closed the case quickly. Their conclusion was oddly vague, a quote-unquote compelling natural force. No further explanation was ever given. That silence left an enormous gap, and people rushed to fill it. Some suspected a local indigenous group, the Mansi, had attacked the campsite, but investigators found no footprints besides the group's own, and no signs of a struggle with anyone else. That theory has since been widely rejected. Others pointed to secret military weapons testing in the area. Some even suggested something stranger, encounters with the unexplained. None of these theories have ever been backed by solid evidence. For 60 years, the mystery mostly stayed exactly that, a mystery. Then, in 2021, a team of scientists took a fresh look at the evidence. Physicists and engineers, led by researchers named Alexander Puzrin and Johann Gohm. They focused on one specific idea, a slab avalanche. Not a huge, dramatic wall of snow, something smaller and much harder to notice. The tent had been dug into the slope, cutting into the snow layer above it. Over hours, wind-blown snow built up on the slope above the tent. Eventually, that small slab gave way and slid directly onto the tent. Not enough to bury them completely, but enough to injure the people sleeping closest to it. This could explain the chest and skull injuries without any external cuts. A blunt, heavy impact spread across the body, exactly the kind snow can cause. Panicked and possibly injured, the group may have cut their way out in a rush, not stopping for boots or coats because the danger felt immediate. Once outside, in complete darkness, disoriented, they may have simply gotten lost, unable to find their way back to a tent that was now buried and hard to see. This explanation does not answer absolutely everything, but it is, so far, the most scientifically consistent explanation we have. In 2019, 60 years after the case first closed, Russia reopened it. Investigators re-examined the old evidence with modern tools and modern science. This is part of what led to the 2021 slab avalanche study we covered earlier. Today, a small museum in the city of Yekaterinburg honors the 9 hikers. Their photographs, journals, and belongings are preserved there. A pass in the Ural Mountains still carries Igor Dyatlov's name, not as a place of fear, but as a quiet memorial to 9 young people who never made it home. One more before we close this out. Does knowing the science make this feel any less unsettling to you? Sit with that. Then let's finish this properly. Here is the part worth remembering. 9 real people went on a trip they were fully qualified to take. They made one small decision about where to pitch a tent, and that one decision, combined with a rare, hidden weakness in the snow above them, cost them everything. Not a monster, not a weapon, not something waiting for them in the dark. Just an ordinary mountain, an ordinary night, and an extraordinarily rare set of circumstances. That is often how the scariest stories actually end. Not with a monster, with something small, ordinary, and impossible to see coming. So, 9 hikers, 1 tent, 1 impossible night. A mystery that pulled in scientists, historians, and millions of curious people for 60 years. And an answer that, for once, might actually be simpler than the myth. If this changed how you see this story, share it with someone who still believes the old theories. Subscribe to Aevum. We ask the questions you stopped asking a long time ago.